There are 10,000 men in prison today for sex with boys, at least 10,000. Of those 10,000, 90% are there for consensual sex with boys over the age of 12. We are talking about youth and men together exploring ourselves, learning about sexuality, learning about consent. Yes, consent's important. Consent's important in politics and religion. It's no different than sex, unless you are afraid of sex, unless sex somehow worries you.
The lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, and queer community is a community that raises awareness to the public about fighting for equal rights for people of different sexual orientations. They also raise awareness of what rights they believe are being excluded from them by protesting and hosting events throughout the country. Although this community has only been around since the 50s or 60s, they have recently become a large part of pop culture and even have an entire month dedicated to celebrating their existence. However, its members are still relentlessly pushing for more social equality because it is their belief that they are still being treated unfairly. I believe investigating their historical development may give us a better understanding of what rights they think they are being denied and why. And I'd like to start with a man named Harry Hay.
33 years ago, Harry Hay and a few other people got together and began to form the nucleus of an organization which would eventually become the Mattachine Society, probably the oldest gay activist organization in America in the post-war years. And I want to start out first by talking a little bit about the sense I have that most lesbians and gay men in America today have no idea, they haven't got the vaguest idea what it took to get them to a place in their lives where they now take for granted some of the things that only a decade ago or a little longer than that were unheard of. And I want to start with you, Harry, to ask you just, first of all, what was it like for you personally to be gay in the 1940s? And what do you think the catalyst was in your life that made you an organizer, that made you, had to give you the courage to get out there at a time when even the word homosexuality wasn't spoken out loud?
Well, I had been being an organizer almost against my will. I was really an educational director. In the early 30s, I had begun organizing migratory farm workers, for example, in 1933 and 1934. And my whole feeling was that I wanted to be involved with helping people better their lives and find ways and means by which they could become people in their lives. Mm-hmm. And I had been working myself as a migratory worker in the hayfields in the summertime since 1925, 1926. So that in 1932 and 33, when there wasn't any money, when there wasn't any funds, and people had to come together in order to cooperate, in order to survive, I found myself thinking this is what I wanted to do. And always I believed, because I've been believing this, I guess, since I was about 13 or 14, that I would help other people, and someday, when it came time for me to find out who I was and to tell other people how beautiful it was to be what we called then a temperamental man, we didn't have the word gay then, I felt that they would help me. And it wouldn't be until the late 40s, it wouldn't be until just about the time of the war years and just after, that I suddenly began to realize they were not going to help me, and I was going to have to do it on my own. But I also could say to the hetero world, well, thank you very much, I have learned a lot of how to organize and how to reach people. You have taught me what it means to live as an outlaw in your society legally, when I had been an outlaw sexually all my life anyway. So to move from the legal position of outlaw to a position of outlaw sexuality on an open basis was just not that much of a step. I just simply thought, well, now it's time for me to organize my people. We're being thrown out of the State Department. We are probably going to be the new scapegoats in the new police world that seems to be coming up as a result of the Smith Act and the Nixon bill and things like that had passed in 1948 and 49. And I felt, now we are going to be the new scapegoats, and we've got to organize. We've got to find out who we are before we get clobbered.
Did you meet a lot of resistance from other gay people? I mean, here you were with an idea, you know, and you went to other gay men and even lesbians and said, we've got to organize. What did they say?
Well, you can read in Jonathan Katz what happened in the thing. I got an idea in 1948, and for 2 years I ran around looking for my first recruit. So I ran into organized resistance all over the place, and finally, in the first part of July of 1950, I found a gay man who said, this is exactly the way I feel about it too, let's work on it together. So as everybody knows, the first action that the gay movement, shall we say, took, two of us, was that this is the beginning of the Korean War. We went down onto the gay beach in Los Angeles and got 500 signatures on the Stockholm Peace Petition. That was our first action.
Did you have a vision then of what it was going to be? I mean, did you think, well, I'm going to try this and maybe nothing will come of it? Or did you think someday this is going to grow into a really vital national movement and people are going to know that it was right?
Well, as you probably know, I am at present involved in what is known as the Radical Fairy Movement.
Right.
And I had been dreaming about, I dreamt even then of the idea that there would be networks of sanctuaries, of places where we could come and out of which we would be able to move and organize and change things across the country. I didn't think that we would be able to flower as we have. I didn't expect that fast. But I did dream of maybe 50 or 60 networks of core groups around the country who would come out and make an appearance, pass out leaflets, zap, as you guys did in GAA in the 70s, and then disappear again.
Right.
Because I felt we were going to have to do that.
Was there a lot of fear around the very subject? Was it a time in the late 40s and 50s when people were worried that they might be on a list?
Oh yes, oh yes. There was a great feel there, because you see, many of us began to recognize rather early that men who had gotten their training on the Red Squads, as they had been in the 30s and 40s, or let's say in the 20s, beginning with the Palmer raids, had moved on from the Red Squad to the Vice Squad, so that they had the same training and they were doing the same kind of thing. And people were aware of the fact, for instance, right in the start of the Civil War, they used to have these civil defense committees, block committees, and that any group of people who had more than 4 or 5 different people coming to their house, there would be some busybody on the block that was writing down all the license plate numbers.
Right.
And so that, yes, there was a fear. But by the same token, we decided very early that all we needed to do, we had learned a lot by this time from the progressive movements, that all we needed to do was to create a facade.
Yeah.
And then behind the facade we could organize, which is what the Mattachine Foundation became. It became that facade, and it seemed to be built of solid marble, pink marble of course, but nevertheless solid marble, and then behind that we would organize. And what was wonderful about it is the moment that people felt that that facade was in place and they were safe, they overcame their fear and they turned out in droves. Why? Because the idea of being together with 30 or 40 people talking about civil rights, talking about social problems, was so new, it was so heady, it was so wonderful. We were all using our body language and our gestures, and we were safe, and we were talking about things, and we were just sharing ideas like crazy. It was a wonderful, heady time.
Since this isn't a biography about Harry Hay, I'll be brief about his history. He lived from 1912 to 2002. While he was in his 20s, he was recruited into the Communist Party of the United States of America by his lover, Will Geer. He created the Mattachine Society, which was a communist party for homosexuals, in 1950. This organization is where Harry developed his reputation and has been given historical credit for being the founder of the modern gay movement. He also founded the Radical Fairies in 1979, which was a religious attempt at rebuking hetero-imitation, is how they called it. Now, the organization that I think is most interesting that Harry Hay is openly affiliated with is an organization called NAMBLA, which stands for the North American Man/Boy Love Association. There isn't a lot of footage of Harry speaking about this group, but there is this photo of him protesting for them. In the 90s, he criticized modern gay movements for not including this group of people enough. Here's a clip of Tom Rees, the founder of NAMBLA, speaking about his ideas.
Tom Rees was the founder of NAMBLA. They have a story that needs to be heard.
I'm the queerest of the queer. At the age of 14, I was thrown down 2 flights of stairs by the entire football team in my high school because I was a fag. Tonight, I feel, during the first part of this program, I was thrown down those stairs again. I've been thrown down those stairs over and over, and worse. I love boys, and boys love me. I ask you tonight, please don't leave. Some people already have been. Please hear us. Give us the space we never have. Why are we attacking each other? Why are we attacking, some people attacking transgender people, a most difficult situation? Why are we being attacked? I believe that like liberation, hatred is indivisible. It comes from the same place as homophobia, erotophobia, racism, and all those hatreds I've seen. I see that same hatred, that same viciousness in the faces of those who scream at me and throw me down those stairs now for loving boys. We're here tonight to support lesbians, to support public sex, to support prostitution, to support gay men, to support transgender people, to support transsexuals, drag queens, and S&M, because we believe in choice and freedom and liberation. We ask you, please, hear us out at least. Many of us come here tonight directly from prison. I mean directly. Some of us come here tonight from suicide attempts, from burnings and threats to be killed. Some of us in this room tonight must wear literally a scarlet letter from the state of Washington and other places. We come, there are 10,000 men in prison today for sex with boys, at least 10,000. Of those 10,000, 90% are there for consensual sex with boys over the age of 12. We're talking about youth and men together exploring ourselves, learning about sexuality, learning about consent. Yes, consent's important. Consent's important in politics and religion. It's no different than sex, unless you are afraid of sex, unless sex somehow worries you. Tonight I ask you, please don't prejudge us at our sexuality based on what is said by the media, the government, the police, the psychiatrists, the social workers. Somehow I don't think they describe you very well. Please let us tell you who we are.
I'm not going to play the rest of the clip because listening to this much of it is infuriating enough, but Tom proceeds to admit to his past crimes by bragging about how him and Richie, the male on the right, avoided being caught by the police, and Tom having several sexual relationships with teenagers as young as 13. Him and Richie met when Richie was running away from home when he was 14. It's absolutely sickening. Tom goes on to claim that they are an oppressed minority and that, I put in quotes, consensual sex with minors is no different than consenting to other politics or religious ideas, whatever the hell that means. My only wish is that those football players push him down the stairs a few more times. You don't need me to tell you all about all the hypocritic statements and contradictions this guy spewed out just during that short clip. Now that you have an idea of how these people present themselves, let's look at this wonderful woman giving a presentation about NAMBLA, her concerns, and what their criminal activity actually looks like.
Sex by 8, or it's too late, is the motto for the North American Man-Boy Love Association, or NAMBLA. And they mean 8 years old. Now, most of you probably never heard of NAMBLA. I know I hadn't until recently. But that old adage of what you don't know won't hurt you is far from the truth in this case. In fact, by the time I'm finished speaking with you, I think you'll agree with me that NAMBLA is a parent and child's worst nightmare. I first stumbled onto NAMBLA while watching late-night television. And as a mother, a Christian, and simply a person with a healthy mind, I became outraged when I heard about this group of organized pedophiles. A pedophile is a person whose object of sexual desire is a child. Well, my outrage spurred me on to become more educated about NAMBLA, and I feel it's imperative that you learn about them too. So tonight, I'm going to talk about 3 important points on NAMBLA. I'm going to talk about who they are, how they go about accomplishing their goals, and how they've influenced the way society thinks. Let's get started by talking about who they are. NAMBLA is the largest group of organized pedophiles in the United States, and according to FBI Special Agent Kenneth Lanning, they're also the most dangerous. They were established in Boston in 1978, and this group claims to be a civil rights and political organization who advocate what they call consensual intergenerational relationships. In other words, they advocate men having sex with little boys. NAMBLA's in Washington lobbying to do away with the legal age for consensual sex. They feel like they're an oppressed minority whose civil rights have been infringed upon, not a group of perverts who want to abuse innocent children. They're trying to convince the public that it's healthy and psychologically beneficial for a boy to have sex with a man. And do you know what the scary part is? Some of our elected officials and professional educators are showing signs of agreeing with them. And I'll show you that in just a little while. Many of NAMBLA's members are intelligent, educated men who work professionally with children. Therefore, they have easier access to your sons and mine. For example, the editor of their monthly newsletter is a public school teacher in New York. His name's Peter Melzer, and he's published an article entitled, "In Praise of the Penises," or, quote, "How to Make That Special Boy Feel Good." Now, I can't speak for everyone here, but personally, I don't want a man like Peter Melzer in charge of my son's classroom. Although NAMBLA claims they support youth liberation and empowerment of young people, a drug and alcohol counselor for the New Hampshire State Department of Corrections knows differently. His name's Floyd Jositis, and he infiltrated NAMBLA and said that children were being abducted and used from one pedophile house to another all across the country. He also said that child pornography was just being traded off like playing cards. And last month, the New Hampshire police found NAMBLA material in a car thought to be used in the abduction and murder of a 10-year-old boy, according to the Associated Press. So you can't help but wonder when you see a child's face on the back of a milk carton, or go into Walmart and see all the posters of the missing children on the wall, if some of these kids weren't victims of NAMBLA too. And you might also be wondering just how big of a problem is this? What's the likelihood of your child in a small town like Kokomo becoming a victim? Let me share some statistics I found on the internet. The Omaha, Nebraska Police Department estimates that there are at least 500 known pedophiles in the Omaha area, and the U.S. Department of Justice says the typical pedophile will molest at least 77 children before he's caught, and most of them are never caught. That would indicate that there are literally thousands of kids in the Omaha area who've become victims. Now, being the sister of a police investigator in the small town of Wabash and having been married to a police officer, believe me when I tell you that small towns have their share of pedophiles too. Now, their crimes might not always be reported in the newspapers, but they're being committed nonetheless. Now that we've taken a look at who NAMBLA are, let's look at how they go about accomplishing their goals, or what makes them so dangerous to our kids. Their credo is, the North American Man-Boy Love Association is both political and educational. We work to organize support for boys and men who have or desire consensual sexual and emotional relationships, and to educate society on their positive nature. This credo is inside each of their monthly newsletters called the Bulletin. The Bulletin also contains step-by-step instructions on how to locate, seduce, sexually assault, and then prevent disclosure of the crimes by their victims. The Bulletin contains an article entitled Entrapment of the Month, which alerts its members to our government's child pornography sting operations. In one newsletter alone, according to Child Lures on the Internet, NAMBLA correctly identified 10 sting operations in 5 different states across the country, so you'd better believe that this organization has some connections. Now, in attempting to accomplish their goals, NAMBLA mails their publications free of charge to hundreds of imprisoned pedophiles. That new state prison is going to be built up here at Grissom, practically in my backyard. So you can imagine how thrilled I was to learn that month after month, NAMBLA's training the imprisoned pedophile how to molest a little bit better so that he doesn't get caught the next time. I guess the imprisoned pedophile isn't really a threat to our children. But what happens after he serves his time? He gets out of that prison. And then is he literally going to be in your backyard? Now, in addition to their monthly publications, NAMBLA accomplishes their goals by attending political rallies, conventions, and conferences. They get on the internet and swap ideas on how to abduct and abuse children. In fact, Child Lure says that pedophiles meet anonymously on the net and exchange their victims' names, descriptions, and even their photographs. So if all this information isn't enough to make you realize that we've got a serious problem here, strap on your seatbelts, because here's where the ride gets really wild. Now I'm going to show you how NAMBLA's influenced the way society thinks. Remember earlier I mentioned that NAMBLA feels like they're an oppressed minority whose civil rights have been infringed upon, not a group of perverts who want to abuse innocent children. The American Civil Liberties Union has defended NAMBLA on that stance. In an article in Time magazine regarding condemning NAMBLA, the ACLU said, well, if it's NAMBLA today, who is it tomorrow? And NAMBLA's been a member of the International Gay and Lesbian Association, or the IGLA, for the last 13 years. In 1994, the United Nations, with support of the United States, moved to provide funds and legitimacy to their agenda by granting official consultant status to the IGLA, according to a 1994 edition of Human Events. And earlier I mentioned that some of our professional educators are showing signs of agreeing with NAMBLA. John Money, Professor Emeritus of Medical Psychology at Johns Hopkins University, said the following in an interview in 1991. If I were to see a case of a boy aged 10 or 11 who's intensely erotically attracted to a man in his 20s or 30s, and if the relationship was totally mutual, and if the bonding was genuinely totally mutual, then I wouldn't call it pathological in any way. And on the Rush Limbaugh program in June of '92, it was reported that the University of Massachusetts has declared pedophilia a minority status. And in conclusion, there's been some pretty scary statements from our own U.S. Senate, too. In a U.S. Senate investigations report, it said, quote, pro-pedophilia groups such as NAMBLA are not as severe a threat to our children as we may feel they are. Now, can you think of a greater threat to our children than a group who's trying to get them to have sex by 8 or it's too late? I can't. Thank you.
Now, NAMBLA doesn't appear to be as publicly active in the current year as it was in the 90s. However, it doesn't mean that their members just disappeared. These people, I believe, are smart enough to find organizations that support laws that favor them in some way to inch them closer to their end game. Doing so will also help hide their motives while getting to appear virtuous at the same time. I suspect that these people, and a lot of them, are active in LGBTQ groups. As a matter of fact, we have evidence of this behavior in the past. In 1972, the Gay Men's Liberation Group decided to drive down to Miami to give the Democratic National Convention a list of 10 demands in the name of equality. Personally, I think most of these demands are ridiculous, but the one I'd like to draw your attention to is demand number 6. It reads, rearing children should be the common responsibility of the whole community. Any legal rights parents have over their children should be dissolved, and each child should be free to choose its own destiny. Free 24-hour child care centers should be established where the F word and lesbians can share the responsibility of child rearing. I find this highly suspicious. All you have to do is ask, why do you want 24/7 access to children you have no affiliation with? Just out of the goodness of your heart? Yeah, I doubt it. What group of people would likely push or support an idea specific as this? Let's come back to present time. A group called the San Francisco's Gay Men's Chorus recently came out with a song called A Message from the Gay Community. Here's a quick clip of it.
We'll convert your children. Someone's gotta teach them not to hate. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We're coming for them. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We're coming for them. Your children will care about fairness and justice for others. Your children will work to convert all their sisters and brothers. Then soon we're almost certain your kids will start converting you. The gay agenda is coming home.
One of the stranger things about that clip is they sing about converting your children, but they don't exactly say what they mean by converting. I personally think that they're trying to sell an ideology more than anything. But some people are taking it as if you buy this ideology, you are now a part of the LGBTQ group. And therefore they're converting your kids to be homosexuals or whatever. But the confusing thing is I'm led to believe that, or at least most gay people think that being gay is not a choice, and therefore it is caused by some genetic sequence that predetermines your behavior or predetermines your sexual preference. But hey, if this isn't a face that you can't trust around your children, I don't know what is. While I was researching this group of people, I ran across this picture. Now, to be clear, I'm not implying that every single one of these men are pedophiles. What I am implying, however, is every single one of these men in this video complied with making it and sending out this message, and not questioning whether it was a good idea or not. The intention behind this video is to establish a historical concept surrounding the gay rights movement and what other associations, many are not aware of, lurk in the background. In my part 2 video, I'm going to be discussing the known biological and psychological science affiliated with homosexual behavior and why that's important to understanding them. If you listen to this, thank you for your attention. If there's anything you think I was incorrect about, please let me know. Criticism is always appreciated, and thank you.